What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Starving Artist with LJ Jones. I am LJ Jones. Guest on the podcast is kind of a big one for me. His name is Matthew McGee. He was the person who gave me my first professional job as an actor. We discussed so many amazing things. It's a great conversation. We discussed basically his time in college. He received a bachelor's in musical theater as well as theater administration. We talk about where various jobs he ended up working after college. Talk about our time together at the Show Palace Dinner Theater in Hudson. We talk about his current position at Free Fall Theater. We talk about all the community outreach work that he does and all the charities that he helps raise money for. And we also talk about the drag queen story hour that he recently did a few months ago that was met with quite a bit of protesters. And we talk about how he handled that. It's a really engaging conversation. It was great to reconnect with an old friend of mine and to talk about his journey. I left this episode feeling encouraged myself. So I hope that you guys feel the same. And without further ado, Matthew McGee.
Everybody's aiming for the top, trying to make it before all your time is up. We stay up on the grind all day, non-stop.
Mr. Matthew McGee, how are you?
I'm doing well. Great to see you. It's been a long time.
It has. It's been a couple of years, and even then, I only saw you one day, and
That's
years
right.
before that.
That's right.
So,
but we always keep in touch and follow each other on our social media, as everyone does these days.
Absolutely, and I'm grateful that you've stayed in my life all these years.
Absolutely.
And it's so good to be face to face, especially like in these unprecedented times.
Absolutely.
So I'll say quickly, Matt gave me my first professional job as an actor, and so I feel like I'm definitely forever indebted to Matt. Anything you'd ever need, I'll be there. But so I wanted to have you on the podcast to just talk about your journey as a performer. Sure. And I mean, you do more than perform. You direct, you write, you're a drag performer. You're the community outreach and marketing director at Free Fall Theater in St. Pete. Yes. You do a lot. You're one of the most busy people I know.
Yes, the hardest working man and woman in show business, some would say.
I love it. And you've won a ton of awards for everything that you've done. So let's just start back in the beginning. Where are you from, and could you tell me about what the defining moment of your life was that made you decide, I want to perform, I want to be involved in show business?
Sure, absolutely. I was born in Augusta, Georgia, which is, if you think about the area, there's kind of, in that particular area, it's getting close to South Carolina by that point.
Okay.
And Augusta is really well known for the Masters, of course, the golf tournament. Mm-hmm. And it's also the birthplace of James Brown, I think. I think that's right.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I was born there, and then my mother, we lived in Atlanta, and we lived in Athens when my mother went back to school. Okay. And we ultimately lived from, I think, I moved around a lot as a young kid. And then from like 11 to when I went away to college, I lived in a town called Washington, Georgia, which is very well known for its historic Southern homes.
Okay.
Because apparently the lore behind that whole town is that when Sherman marched through Georgia and marched through Atlanta during the Civil War, he burned a lot of the homes, and he missed Washington, which is very easy for anybody to miss Washington. You can even do it today. Yeah. But because it's a tiny little town, but he missed Washington, so all of those homes are intact. So a big part of their business is for people to be able to come from all over the world and check out those old-fashioned, refurbished Southern homes. It's kind of interesting.
Oh, for sure. Now I want to go to Washington. I want to see these beautiful
really
homes.
Neat. It's a small, quaint town, and I think it's really charming. And known for its history. And of course, it being the South, it's known for a lot of other things that are not perfect. Right. But it does have this great tourism part of the town that is really big for them, and I think it drives their economy in a way. And then of course, we were talking about, I went to Valdosta State University. You know, when I was growing up, I went through a period of where I would perform when I was a kid, a small child and a kid. Mm-hmm. And up until about 7 or 8, I began to feel like it zeroed me out in a way that wasn't positive. I think I was getting a little picked on for performing and being in theater, and I decided I would go more towards visual art, and I left it behind until a little bit after puberty, when I thought, forget it, I don't care. And I wanted to get back into it. Right. The first real palpable moment for me that I wanted to be on stage did not come from really doing any theater or anything like that. I remember watching television variety series like Carol Burnett, the Sonny and Cher show, where they did skits and they did musical numbers. And I thought, oh my gosh, I really want to do that, or something like that. So that really drove me even more than theater. I feel like even as a young actor, I didn't know enough about theater. Even when I started my college years at Valdosta State University, I didn't feel like I was well-versed enough in what I needed to do. I was very green and very unpracticed. I'd only done a little bit of community theater here and there. But in my head, I knew I had this persona that I wanted to present. So I sort of worked hard to figure out who that was and what it should be. And I think a big moment for me in college was I suddenly realized I could get laughs, and that I knew sort of the mechanics behind comedy, that it wasn't something that I had to say, okay, if I do A, B, and C, this will be funny. I just sort of knew how to do it and knew how to shape a line, or how to do a correct bit of staging in a way that I knew it would be humorous. And that's when I started to really understand that there is some natural ability at that. So I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll take that and I'll hone it, and I'll work on it all through college. And I really found myself to have a successful college life because I knew what my type was. I knew what I did. I knew what part to go out for, even if it wasn't the part that everyone wanted. Right. I knew I was a comedic character actor, and I knew exactly what to do. And I found myself, just like now, busy all the time. I also decided that I would do, I got a BFA in theater performance, but I also have I also had an emphasis in theater management, which as we talk more will start to make sense, because I knew I wanted to be a part of the business side of it. And that's helped me a lot too throughout my life to be able to have sort of a performing life and an administrative life that kind of keeps me able to make a living in a business that's really hard, as you know well.
So I feel like I've had a lot of conversations with various different people who have different opinions on going to college for performance, whether that be film and television, theater, whatever it may be. So in your experience, as somebody who has went to school for performance as well as administration, what did you take from it? Do you think it's been beneficial for your career post-college?
I will say this. In 1994, it was kind of the only thing that I knew I should do. I think times have changed. I think, look what we're doing right now. Look how we're able to communicate with each other. Look at the way we're able to put ourselves out there online in a way that we were never able to do when I was, a young up and coming performer. The only option was to be on stage, because that's the only way you could do anything. We couldn't even, LJ, we didn't even film it that much back then. So you didn't even have your work on a reel. So now I think it's very different. If I could say the one benefit is I went to a school that wasn't my first choice. I auditioned at New York University, and I made it into the program not the musical theater, but the acting program. But my parents were not able to afford that. It's a very expensive out-of-state school. And though my parents are both, my dad's a veterinarian, my mother's a teacher, they were working professionals, but it was just a lot to come up with. And I didn't have the grades to really, I did okay, but I wasn't interested in school. I was wanting to do other things.
Yes.
So I went to the school, and I think the best thing that came out of it was the ability to be on stage and perform more than just study and talk about it, because they did a whole season of shows plus a summer stock in the summer where I got to get so much experience. But also in my professional life, having a Bachelor of Fine Arts has helped me to secure other employment during times when I needed it. Does that make any sense? Right. I'm sure it does.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So after college, we've already discussed, you stay busy. You've always, I've known you 12 years now, I think.
Yeah.
And you've always been nonstop. So could you give our listening audience a quick rundown of all the different hats you've worn over the years since college?
Right out of college, I did a summer stock job, and then I went right into a touring a children's theater tour in Atlanta, Georgia, through an HMO there called Kaiser Permanente, and they had this really cute show called Professor Bodywise and His Traveling Menagerie, and there was puppetry, and the kids loved it. I mean, we were waking up at 3 and 4 in the morning to get set up and go do the show. It was an exhausting time. I was in Atlanta for a while, and I wasn't finding that I was making many inroads in their community. I would go to auditions, but I also realized that at the time I came out of school, the years for me to be a successful actor, LJ, this is hard to believe, and it's crazy to even think of right now, because what did I do in the meantime? But that I'll explain. Yeah. This right now, in my mid to late 40s, is my time for acting. And so during that time, what was I going to do? So I moved to New York for a little bit. I moved to New York in in August of 2001.
Wow.
So I was in New York for September 11th.
Yeah.
This kid from the South, from a small town and a medium-sized college in a small town, South Georgia, only having lived in the metro area of Atlanta for maybe a year, and Atlanta is very different. It's a lot like Florida. It's spread out. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I was scared. And I as soon as I was able to get a job out of town, I took it. And I worked in Illinois and Chicago for a little while, doing some dinner theater, doing some regular theater, and I began, that was my first big dinner theater job, which was fun, right? I was at a place called Circa 21 Dinner Playhouse. It's funny, because dinner theater always is, to many people, someplace you don't want to end up. And so it was where I started.
Yeah.
And I worked regionally for a couple years, living out of a suitcase. When I wasn't working, I'd go home, visit my folks, and then I'd get back on the road. I had a little Geo Metro and a couple of suitcases. And then I got a job through audition for at Show Palace Dinner Theater. I did a show called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And for many years, I would go back and forth there working regionally as an actor. I did a tour of a show called Nuncrackers, which is nonsense. It's Dan Goggins. So that was a lot of fun. So I stayed extraordinarily busy working regionally, doing a little bit in New York here and there, mostly readings, and a very short run off Broadway in a show called Blessing in Disguise, about drag queens. And drag was not something I really wanted to do. It never crossed my mind until I saw the way people reacted to it. And I thought, man, people really like this. As opposed to fighting it off, I said, I'll put it in my back pocket. And then after many years of working at Show Palace, they needed an artistic director. And they came to me and said, do you know of anybody? And I didn't offhand. And I said, let me do the job for a little while. And I'll help you find somebody, because I like this company and I like Florida. And it was close to Orlando, and I'd got some work at Disney too. And I found myself called cultivating a living in this area. And I thought, okay,
Right.
I can make this work. And then I was there for like almost a decade after that, which was really a great blessing. And in some ways, I don't want to say curse, that's such a strong word, but
Mhm.
there were pros and cons to being there. I felt like I left a lot of my career, my regional career, or whatever New York career I was trying to have.
Mhm.
I left that to be in Florida
Yeah.
full time working at this dinner theater. But I can't tell you how many people got their start at that theater when I was working there, how many great friends I was able to keep employed, how I was able to make a living for myself,
Yeah.
to be able to do shows. Like when I cast you, I mean, the fact that I was able to get Full Monty produced at the Show Palace,
Yeah.
all of that was so exciting. So I take that time and I put it away in a little box, and I see it as a real positive time, and mostly for the people that I came into contact with.
Yeah. There's a lot of wonderful people there. I took my son to see Shrek this past summer, and that was his first time seeing theater in live.
Great.
And I got right up on the stage, the table right up on the
Right
stage.
close. Yep.
And my son, I have a picture. I posted it. I don't know if you saw it. I'll have to send it to you. But I have a picture of my son while the show's going on. I was trying to get him to not touch the stage, but I kept finding him going like this.
Of course.
He was amazed.
He's got the bug.
Oh yeah. When we left, he said, Daddy, can I learn how to sing and dance and act? I said, of course you can.
Of course. Just like your dad was so supportive of you during that time too.
Absolutely.
And that was a big part of me wanting to use you for Full Monty, is I knew that your dad would be around. I knew that your dad did everything he could to support you. And I knew that you would be reliable. I knew you wanted it, and I knew he wanted to make sure it happened for you. Yeah. And I thought you had the talent. I thought you had the look. Very hard to cast that role. You need someone preteenish.
Yes. Yeah.
And when I cast you, you were a little bit younger and a little bit smaller by the time that we got to the show, which was perfect. That's exactly what it needed to be. And it just all worked out the way it was supposed to. And, that's a lot of people's one of their favorite shows at Show Palace. It was really a good time, and it had a wonderful cast.
I remember the audition. I don't remember a lot from around that age, but probably just because it was such a monumental experience for me. But I remember I was the first kid to audition for the Full Monty. Yeah. And I remember, I don't remember who all was in the room. I know you were there. Todd Eskin was. Yes. Probably Susan Hadelman was there, right?
Maybe Susan, and Katie Kerwin, maybe too, I think.
And probably Andy, because she choreographed the show, right?
Andy definitely would have been there. Yeah.
I remember I did the audition. It was the Nathan's final scene in the Full Monty during Let It Go. And I remember finishing the audition and Todd asking to talk to me and my father to the side. We ended up going into the kitchen there at the Show Palace.
Of course.
And he said, of course, we have to continue auditioning people, but essentially the role is yours if you want it. He did inform us. My dad he wasn't very familiar with much theater, still isn't, but he wasn't really aware of what the show was or anything like that. So Todd kind of broke down the show a little bit and said it is R-rated. They're swearing, they're stripping, there's this and that, and essentially, I heard shortly thereafter, maybe a day or two after, that I had officially booked. Yeah. And I just honestly probably the best professional experience of my life.
That's wonderful.
And it was I just always look back fondly. I wish we had tape of it. I would love to see it.
I'm going to look around. Let me look around because when I left there in 2012, I think, and that wasn't a great process the way all that happened. I was, but not one that I take that I feel negatively about now, because I think it opened up a lot of new things for me. I would have probably stayed there as long as I could have, because I was happy doing it, but it gave me a bit of a kick in the pants to do some new and more exciting things. But I wasn't able to get a lot of the great stuff that, a lot of the documentation of all the stuff we did, like videos and stuff. But I might have Full Monty somewhere, and if I do, I'll mail it to you. Just send me your address, because it'll be on a disc, so you'll have to find a way to make that work. I don't have anything that takes discs anymore. But, you could definitely figure that out. But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience, and I was super busy during that time. I think I was doing another show at the time, so I was running back and forth, and and it came together so beautifully.
That cast that you put together it was electric.
I thought so too. I thought so from everybody. I mean, every single person was exactly right, and it looked really beautiful. Tom Hansen did a gorgeous job. I thought the music was solid. Larry Buzzio, of course, who played your dad, who of course you have this great relationship even still. It really sparked a lot of that for many people. And so I think a show like that about camaraderie can bring that out in people. And, I thought about this, Terrence McNally, who recently, the playwright who recently passed away from coronavirus, of all things.
It's awful.
He wrote the book to that musical. And the heart in that play is all about family. And it's not about, it's about, yes, of course, Jerry and his son are about the family that you have, but this is about the family you choose and the family that you can kind of create. And I think that's why it was such a warm experience, because it's a play about people from all walks of life joining together and doing something really awesome and learning about each other. Yeah,
it's such a beautiful story. I remember, I mean, even to this day, when I talk about it, and somebody will ask me, well, what was it about? And you give the explanation, and people are like, oh, that's an interesting idea for a musical, but the heart behind it is amazing. And I remember a couple of different experiences that kind of stick out to me. Was the one, I don't know if you were there, because we had probably been in production for maybe 3 weeks at the time.
Right.
So we had only been, I think we were at Man. I think Man was being performed.
Yeah. Big number. Yeah.
And somebody we're right exactly where I was sitting with my son for Shrek. Somebody was hammered drunk. So Man takes 15 minutes into the show, 20 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
And somebody's hammered drunk. So it actually had to be pre-Man, because I was on stage, and when I had come off, so yeah, it was right around there. It was just me and Larry on stage, and this woman in the front row is screaming, "Take it off, take it off!"
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I heard all about that. Yeah.
She was escorted out.
Of course.
That I just remember, and that's a challenge too. Especially as an 11-year-old, I'm like, oh, I can't break, but what do I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, like I think even though I was young, I hope I wasn't too annoying to people.
No, never.
Thank you.
You were a very polite, quiet young man until you got up there and performed. You were very unassuming, very polite, very intelligent, and you kept you and your dad. I mean, you made good friendships, especially during the run, because rehearsal is this crazy time where you're getting hit with all this stuff, and in the run, you show up every day. You see these people every day.
Yeah.
I always found you to be quite a good kid, and I felt that was more important than anything to the success of the production. I've always believed that you do your best to bring people together who are good people.
Right.
Because what's the other option? That's an unpleasant situation for everyone. So
for sure,
we're very lucky that every now and then, and it's more the exception to the rule, that everyone really enjoyed each other, and you were a kid that didn't annoy everybody. Sometimes there's all these horror stories about what do they say? Never work with kids or animals.
Yes.
And you really bucked that old saying, because you were just terrific.
I appreciate that. I really do. And putting Larry and I together, still close to this day. I wrote and directed my own movie. I cast him to play my father.
Yes.
That was my first time. I've stayed in touch with him, but that was my first time seeing him since the Full Monty closed.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of surreal to be on set with him, seeing him face to face, and honestly, I wrote that role for him.
Of course.
And he wasn't sure if he could make it happen just with the distance and the schedule. And if he wasn't able to do it, the scene wasn't going to be in the movie. He's only in one scene. But I have a line in there for him to say, because my character in the movie is an actor. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a biopic, but I think you write from what you know.
Your personal elements of what you bring to your art. Absolutely.
And so I wrote his character to be a mix of my real father and a mix of Jerry, really.
Yeah.
And there's a line in it where basically he's telling me to, you got a family, you gotta figure this out. Acting's not working, so give it up. And he has a line where he's like, if I was in your shoes, I would be a fast food worker. I'd be a custodian. Just be a stripper if you have to. And that was just a little fun. Right. Nobody will know that but anybody who was involved.
Yeah.
But that was fun. So again, thank you for giving me my first job. Nothing but fond memories from it.
Absolutely. Larry is such a fine actor. Do you know what I mean? And I knew that he could do that role justice. I've seen him do so many great things over the years. Mm-hmm. He is he's quite good, and he's quite a lovely person. So he was the perfect Jerry for what we were doing at that time. And I still think we are going to see more and more from Larry. He's another one that's going to age like a fine wine.
Yes, absolutely. So after you left the Show Palace, did you directly end up at Free Fall after that, or was it?
I did. It was not very long before they had heard that I had been. And then the whole reason for the change at Show Palace was, a new family was taking over the business, and they wanted to go in a different direction. And I didn't. There was a part of me when it happened that thought, I could have hard feelings about this, and I just decided not to. Or at least I decided to only have them privately and not put them all over social media.
Yeah.
And I quickly got over it in a way that I didn't think I would. I moved on from it fairly quickly. And and they look at them, they're still going and they're doing great. But I went to probably a month later and started working there. And I also got a new show. I opened a new show at Disney called The Royal Majesty Makers. All of that was happening at the same time. So I went from working at Show Palace for almost a decade to freaking out like, oh gosh, am I ever going to work again? And almost immediately I had two things to now juggle that had me driving all over Florida. I was driving from Spring Hill to St. Pete to Orlando and back. It was crazy.
So you stayed living in Spring Hill at the time then?
Well, I bought a house and it took me forever to get that house sold.
Especially around that time, the market was...
It was rough. So it was a tough time to have a home like that. And the last thing I could do was move closer. And ultimately it all worked out as I knew it would. But it took many years of trying to figure that out. Yes, if I could say I was bitter about anything, not having that job for as long as I did, suddenly not having it, put me in maybe a precarious financial situation. But such is life when major things happen.
Yeah. And things always seem to work themselves out.
They do. And if you can keep your mind on that, I think you can thrive no matter the situation. Just knowing that almost everything, aside from death and taxes, has an ultimate, or a way to work it out. So.
I've definitely realized over the years, like I'm pretty open about it. I'm diagnosed with depression and stuff like that. Right. So I go to therapy, and my therapist had said something similar to what you just said that stuck out to me, and is something I wake up with trying to remember, is that it's easy to find the negative in a lot of situations, but find the positive.
Absolutely.
And when you find that positive and focus in on the positive, then you just kind of notice your life beginning to change, and it's just so important to think of that.
Well, if you think about the Show Palace, in a way, you're a young actor, you're like myself, and you have these dreams for what you want to do, And the last thing you thought you'd ever do would be running a dinner theater in Hudson, Florida, and sort of a part of Florida, I mean, that nobody knows really well. And,
Right.
but I seized that opportunity to learn as much as I could, to help create that kind of experience, to help create for others their experience, and to also make it be the best it could possibly be. To not let geography and history and and any of that kind of paint the way I felt about what I was doing. I wanted it to be great, and I think that's kind of how you have to be.
Yeah. So how's your experience been at Freefall?
Freefall's been great. It was a very different role for me. I had been the artistic director of Show Palace, and I'd been mainly directing and casting and doing all that stuff. I was kind of happy not to have to do that. That's all very stressful. Yeah. And there was a big part of what I did at Show Palace that was audience development, where I sort of worked hard to make sure more people came to Show Palace by what I was doing. And I would go to different events and talk. I would go to retirement communities, retirement homes. I would go and sell Show Palace to the people. And Freefall had just started, and I think they needed someone to play that type of role. And I was challenged by the idea of doing it, and also really excited about the opportunity.
That's amazing. Yeah. So you do so much for the community. Like, obviously, you're a community outreach director and for Freefall, but aside from that, you do a lot of charitable things. Yes. I think specifically Golden Girls. Yep. Golden Girls Live that you did at American Stage, was it?
We did it at American Stage. So every year during Pride, we would do. There was a wonderful man named Gary Brule who taught me a lot about generosity and being charitable. If you can't be charitable with your money, be charitable with your time. Right. And he always instilled in me the idea, he's passed away recently, bless him, but he always instilled in me the idea that if you have talent, you shouldn't give it all away for free. You know, I would always say, this will be great experience for you. Well, that doesn't pay exposure. Exposure doesn't always pay the bills. But if you have the time and you have a worthy cause, it's not a bad thing to do. So every year we put on a parody of a television show or a movie, and we've done so many ridiculous things. But we did Golden Girls Live to raise money for Metro Wellness, or Metro Inclusive Health, which is an LGBTQ organization which provides health care. They have wonderful programs for LGBTQ youth, especially trans youth who are in the midst of trying to figure so much out at a time when it's hard enough just to be a teenager. And they have all these wonderful programs for them and all this great education. And it's not just for LGBTQ people. There are many people who can seek and get great health care at Metro Inclusive. So it's a wonderful organization. So we raised about $14,000 doing Golden Girls, two nights, 4 performances. And that's not a terrible amount of time. Yes, it took a long time to write it and prepare it and get all the clothes and costumes, but all the actors give of their time. You have to read the script because there's no time or money to rehearse. So you get together the night before for a couple of hours, run through it, and then you do your performance holding the book, and the people love the hilarity and the freshness that can ensue from that kind of a situation. But I found that over the years, I've tried to do as much as I can for charities that I believe in, charities that promote LGBTQ wellness or visibility. There was one program I worked on for years where people who were being treated for HIV and AIDS were unable to pay for the medication, and many of them were having to choose to either have their life-saving meds or get rid of their pets. And so I did a whole initiative where we would pay vet bills and food bills so that these people could have their pet. I mean, what an awful thought that somebody would have to come to that kind of decision. And it happens to many people, but if there's anything you can do to make sure that doesn't happen, I knew that was something I wanted to do. Yeah, mostly animal charities and working to help the LGBTQ plus IA. There's so many letters now. Community.
And speaking of pets,
Yeah.
I remember when you got Brian, such a beautiful, amazing.
Gosh, Brian, how old was Brian during that? He was still a
He was
baby,
puppy.
right?
Yeah, I think you got him during the run.
I did.
Around that time, maybe.
I think just during the run. Yeah, because I think right after Full Monty was maybe Kiss Me Kate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Brian is a Westie, a West Highland White Terrier. He's 12 years old, and he's still doing great. He's running around here somewhere. Mostly now, Brian, because he's an older man, at about 8:30, he'll jump off the couch where he's been all day, and he'll walk to the bedroom, and you'll need to put him on the bed, and it doesn't matter what you're doing the rest of the night. Brian has gone to bed.
Oh, he's tired. He's I used to love seeing him run around the theater, and he's just an adorable dog.
He's had this remarkable little career too. He's been in plays as well, and he's been backstage, and he's a theater dog. He knows to be quiet during rehearsals. He knows when it's 10, when they say take 10, he knows that he can go out. So he gets up because it's time for him to take a pee break. And if he's in a show, he'll be quiet the entire show. And then when he hears the applause at the end, he'll start circling and barking because he knows it's time he can go home.
That's amazing. I remember always thinking, I don't know if he ever did it, but I always wanted to see him in Legally Blonde.
He went on in Legally Blonde because he's a Westie, so he isn't the right dog for it. But the one night I was doing the show as Callahan, and the bulldog was not feeling well, and they were worried about how to do it because he was getting sick. And Brian went on, and they still kept up all the pictures of the bulldog and everything, but Brian was on. Brian's been in a couple different things, including recently being in Pippin at Free Fall, where he was super well received in that. So what a great life. I know he's getting older, and I get so worried about that, but he's well taken care of, and he's having a heck of a time. So I think I'm excited to have more and more years with this fun little character. He's really not a dog to me. He's like my son. It's so
exactly. And that's what I was going to say is your pets become your best friends, your families, your kids. Sure. And I'm sure seeing Brian in some shows is like that moment of seeing a loved one do so well in something. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And the only thing that was really poignant for me this go round was this was the first time where I felt like he was like, I'd rather be at home and not have to go to the theater every day. And sometimes he didn't want to be on, and I thought, he's getting to where he wants to retire. And I totally understand.
So we're talking about what you do for the community. Was it probably less than a year ago, maybe a year ago, you did the Drag Queen Story Hour and Awareness.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I remember you posting about leading up to it, and I was like, oh, that's exciting, it's beautiful. But you were met with some protesters. Yeah,
quite a bit. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to ask you what happened. Because, you learned so much from Facebook, but.
Yeah. It was pretty jarring to me. In fact, right before the coronavirus hit, I had been really thinking about taking a break from all the drag and all the extra performing aside from the things I do in the theater and the things I do for Free Fall. Because of that experience, and also because I'm getting older and it's just a lot of irons in the fire. But now I'm looking at it going, I didn't want this long of a break, but I went into it really not expecting. I thought there would be protesters outside, and I was prepared for that. My style of drag is not very, maybe not the right word, but it's not a sexy drag. I don't try to look, like someone that you're like, that's a man. I know that I'm a man in a dress. So it's very Bianca Del Rio. It's very Ben de la Creme. It's not, it's comedy drag, clown drag.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I may not get met with too much at all because this is kind of like Dame Edna or something. And you could totally see kids being read a story by Dame Edna and not have a problem. Well, it all went well. The families were wonderful. And right as I began to do it, And I didn't even realize this because when I went in early, I kind of met a few of the early kids who got in there early, and we colored. And I have these stickers that I sell. It's a Miss McGee, a Matthew McGee sticker. And so I was handing them out to the kids because they love that kind of stuff. And I thought it was a great time to meet them. And there was a woman there that I thought may have been a mom or something. A couple of women, I thought maybe moms or grandmas. And they were following me around taking pictures. And I thought nothing of it because I thought, oh, this is family members. And of course, the people who are protesting, they have every right to do that outside, in front. I mean, my personal feeling on it is Drag Queen Story Hour is not that big of a deal. It's not going to mess kids up at all. And I think the truth is they scare the children more than a drag queen could, as their fears that a drag queen will somehow corrupt their child. But I think getting out there and screaming nasty things in the name of Christianity does more to frighten and scar a child than a man dressed in that. And I don't even just mean a man dressed as a woman. There are many transgender performers who do this as well. And they are women who also do drag. So, which I know that's a whole other show we could do about how all the differences with that. But as soon as I picked out 3 great stories, and as soon as I started doing it, I started getting shouted down by 2 women. They were filming, screaming at me, scaring the kids, filibustering me. I couldn't get things out. I held my ground. I made a decision, LJ, that whatever I was met with, I would not respond in kind, because they wanted me to get pissed, and they wanted, I'm sure I can say whatever I want on this, but they wanted me to get angry and fight back and say something they could film, or behave in a way, cuss them out or something. They could film it, and then they would cut that together and go, look at this horrible drag performer and their filthy mouth. I knew that was part of what they do. It was unpleasant, to say the least. I got through it. But she shouted and shouted. And I had a dear friend who was there, and she was in tears because she, like me, just didn't expect it. I did not get emotional there. I got emotional way after the fact. But I thought it would end there. And they followed me to my car. They stood behind my car. They shouted at me through my window of my car. So from the whole experience, getting there, doing it, I have to say that I got so much support from the parents and the kids, but it was not a pleasant experience for me at all. In fact, it goes down in history as the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I have some thoughts on that a little bit, but I put myself in the position. I truly didn't believe that it would be a problem. And that shows my naivete, because obviously
shouldn't have been a problem.
Right. And now what happened after that was I began to see, because I don't use a drag name very often, I use my name. They found me on social media. They started hounding me on social media. They started tagging me in these very derogatory. They would take a picture of me in drag and like superimpose a filter on it that made it look like a negative. So I suddenly looked like dark and, where they make it look like a black and white. It was so weird. Yeah. And I found a lady on Twitter, and she is a professional protester. She goes from town to town protesting Drag Queen Story Hour, and she makes money off of it. And I think she's
a life.
She's a total phony and a performer. And this is what she does. And unfortunately, my feeling on it is, if any of them are doing it because they think it's something that God would want them to do, I think they're turning more people off to Christianity than I am dressing in drag, to be totally honest.
No, for sure. And we can, I mean, I grew up in a Christian school, and when doing the full Monty, I ended up having to leave the Christian school and go to a different school because they didn't want me to do a show such as, and to this day, I'm still a Christian. However, I think Christians get it all wrong.
They do.
I think I've known him for a while. He's a friend of mine, and he enjoys protesting. I've definitely distanced myself from him. I call him out on his protesting. He posted a video. He was protesting an abortion clinic, and it was just, I just told him how disgusting. You know, especially you these women. You don't know. They God forbid, could have been raped.
Oh,
You
sure,
don't know
sure.
what's going on, and you're going to sit there and you're going to scream at them and shout at them, and
Well,
it's a shame.
the important thing to remember, and this is what buoyed me through it, because I really found myself at a crossroads, because I'm going to be honest, I guess I wasn't prepared for that, LJ, because I have never experienced. I've always said that in a way I'm like the Ellen DeGeneres of drag, that my drag is very mainstream. Most, if everyone, really enjoys it. The best thing to take with you is that these protesters are a very small percentage of Christians. There's many people on my page were saying, oh, these horrible Trump supporters. Truth is, I know a lot of Trump supporters who aren't anti-gay. And so I think lumping everybody into that category is the wrong thing to do. It's as divisive as shouting these things at other people. Know that they are very much a minority. They're just very vocal.
Yes. Yeah.
But they are not what most Christians feel. It's not what most, and I hate to even say that, Trump supporters, because I think Trump supporters in general are very unlikely to be a part of something like that. It's very much a fringe. And they're loud and they get off on doing this. But yeah, it was tough for me, LJ, but I see it as a character building moment in my life where I finally learned that not everybody is going to love you, and that's okay.
Yeah. So I was curious in that situation, what it was supposed to be an amazing experience for the kids, met with negativity by the protesters. How did you maintain a positive experience for the kids? I'm sure that scared them, and I know you, so I know you were focused on the kids in the moment.
I focused on the performance. I knew that I had to give a performance, and it's just like being sort of heckled on stage. A lot of people said, we couldn't even tell anything was going on. I said, good, that's exactly what I want to hear. And that was good. But no, I knew I couldn't fight back in a way, and I knew that would be just what they wanted from me. So I hung back a little bit and just got through it, like getting through a performance if the crowd is bad, which happens.
Yes.
You know?
Oh yeah.
So,
well, you handled it well, and you certainly handled it correctly, because I'm still just so horrified that you even had to go through something like that. So I'm sorry you had to go through something like that.
Listen, thank you. That's very sweet. And the truth is, it happens, and I try really hard to not let it get me down too much, but.
So with these unprecedented times we're in with coronavirus, COVID-19, how has it affected theater in your eyes? How has it affected free fall? And also, what I imagine can only be defined as electrifying, what will that first night back be? Oh,
sure. What a great question. What's really crazy is in your lifetime, right? Yours, especially growing up, you've grown up with September 11th and the Great Recession and all this stuff, you've seen your fair share of catastrophes. Most of those are regional problems. When you get a hurricane in Florida, it really affects that area that it hits the hardest for a certain amount of time, but there's an end to it. And maybe those theaters that got hit hard, they closed for a period of time. Yeah. But it never looked like they would have to close for an indefinite period of time.
Right. Yeah.
Or if it's a theater company and it experiences that, your donors and people who give from other areas, they will say, oh, we'll do everything we can to make sure that theater survives. Well, if everyone is hit by this, then what do? Right. Suddenly there's no theater happening anywhere.
Yeah.
And all the people that you may have relied on for donations and stuff, they're being hit hard economically too.
Right.
So what happened, my experience, I had been aware of coronavirus because at that time I've always been a bit of a media junkie. Now that's changed recently, and I can speak to that a little bit too. I don't watch it much anymore because it's not helpful. But I knew coronavirus was something that we might need to worry about. I didn't know the degree to what it would be. Mm-hmm. I was working on an original play by a dear friend of mine, a St. Petersburg writer named Natalie Simons. It's called The People Downstairs. I had talked to you about all the drag I've done. This was a male role. No drag. He was the romantic lead in a very comical way. And I was looking forward to audiences seeing a different thing for me to do. Very funny, but extremely poignant.
Mm-hmm.
And that week, we were also at Free Fall. So I was at American Stage performing and at Free Fall working administration.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two theaters within the same city, really only miles apart.
Mm-hmm.
And dealing with the administrative side of our artistic director, myself going, well, and others on the staff going, well, if we get told we can't have 50 or more people, we're going to have to shut down the run of this current play. We're going to lose 2 weeks of the run. Yeah. At American Stage, we did 2 previews, sold out previews. And then we were brought in for a rehearsal at 4:30 on opening night. And they said, we're not continuing the show. All that work. And I was not as sad for myself as I was for the playwright who'd been working on this for years. I had done some workshops of it. This was such an amazing opportunity. Now, apparently it's coming back in September to American Stage, so that's great.
Oh, good.
But at the time, I thought, whoa. So that was Friday, March 13th. That closed. And then 2 days later, the CDC said, no groups of 50 or over. And all of a sudden, this hit comedy at Free Fall called Lone Star Spirits closed. Now, American Stage graciously paid the actors out for their whole contracts. Wow. And Free Fall did the same, finished up the contracts and paid the actors for those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then both theater companies had to cancel shows. Unprecedented that all theaters were doing that, right?
Yeah. Including Broadway. West
Broadway.
End,
everything got shut down. So that's really scary, I think. I think, and especially at that time, you know what I was saying the other day? Oh, it's May already. March and April. What a weird couple of years we had. Because that's what it felt like.
Absolutely.
Now, what's great is at Free Fall, we have a small staff. We don't have a lot of people. And there were enough, we were getting enough of a revenue stream to keep a large part of our staff working because there was still stuff to do. Like even today, I'm still working on interviews and things that, gearing up for what's coming. We have a season announcement. We have a COVID-19 giving challenge where some of our donors have graciously said, we'll match your donations dollar for dollar. So a person can give $25 and it'll be $50. It doubles, a person's giving, which is just amazing. Yeah. So a lot of that's really great. But I feel really terrible for people who are primarily actors. Think about this, LJ, the people that are primarily actors who also wait tables as a side job. I mean, I'm just giving you a thought there. I mean, now restaurants aren't even open. So it's
even
really
Show Palace. The actors wait tables.
It's crazy. Now, I do see a light at the end of the tunnel. Mm-hmm. I do see that the social distancing worked. And let me explain to you why I stopped watching the news. I won't speak to what it is politically, but I think there's a little bit of a narrative there combined with people maybe not having as much, what's the best way to put this? People not feeling as comfortable with what the government was doing, that all combined together to create a real sense of hysteria and fear. And when people are afraid, it closes everything down. Yeah. I'm not one of those people, though, who thinks being afraid of it is wrong. I think it's serious. I don't know. I don't want anybody to get it. I've known a few people who've gotten it and thankfully have gotten over it. Yeah. But it's scary. Yeah. But I think we're seeing some of the rates go down and we're seeing some very positive numbers. Yeah. And so I think we'll start getting back to theater at the end of summer, maybe fall. And I think it's going to be slow going. I think the audiences won't be as big. I think you're going to see audiences with their faces covered and sitting separately. But the idea that we can all get into a room together again and experience people telling a story right in front of us, I think this has only strengthened what theater can bring. Look at it right now. You can watch movies all day at home. I mean, I know I've been doing that when I have time off, and you can stream theater, and there's a lot of theater out there to stream, but it's not the same as going. Yeah. And I think that how amazing it will be when people can see it again. They will have a new appreciation for something they may have taken for granted, and they'll be quite moved by this experience. I also think, LJ, that you'll see a lot more positive, uplifting, and funny programming from theaters. It won't just be theater. There's a place for theater that instructs you and teaches you and makes you think. That's an important part of it. Yeah. But for a while, post-COVID, I think we're going to have some fun. We're going to entertain people, and we're going to tell them stories that make them feel happy and make them want to go out there and live life to the fullest. And I think that's going to be an unprecedented and exciting time to watch theater grow and become more of.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right. Though, what were you about to say? I mean, it'll be amazing.
You just made me think of when you're talking about the type of production we'll be seeing. Yeah. You made me think of Roger Debris and it's in the song "Keep It Gay" and the producers just talking about just keep it light, keep it. You know what I mean? Like,
people,
I'm excited for that.
What is it? People want laughter when they see a show. The last thing they're after is a litany of woe. Yeah.
That's what it's going to be, and I'm excited. And I think the community. I've been seeing a lot more theater over the last couple of years of just being financially able to. And I got to see Hamilton on the tour. I got to see Sound of Music on the tour, which I don't know what order these episodes are coming out, but I am interviewing Jill Christine Wiley, who played Maria in the Sound of Music tour. And I'm excited for that because she was incredible. And I got to see Dear Evan Hansen. Have you seen it? Or
it's wonderful. Wonderful.
I saw it at the Straz, gigantic. So you're sitting there with strangers, people you don't know, and you're all experiencing this because that's a heavy show. It's funny, but it's heavy.
That's the magic of theater too. Being there with one another and having. Because one thing about Dear Evan Hansen, I don't consider it maybe heavy or light. It is a real story about real people.
Yes.
And life is not always black and white. It's all sorts of shades of gray. And I think that's what makes that show so special.
Yes. And I can't wait to get back to the theater and honestly, I love theater. I've only done one thing in theater since the Full Monty. I can't sing. I would love to sing. I've taken lessons.
You didn't have to in that show.
No. And I did some charity with Jimmy Ferraro.
Love Jimmy. I wouldn't be in Florida if it wasn't for Jimmy. Yeah.
He's told me that story. He's excuse me. He's an amazing man. He gave me the opportunity to do a murder mystery dinner theater at Spartan Spartan Manor here in Newport Richey, and we were raising money for the golf high school to take their I think it was their government class to the inauguration of his last presidency.
That's amazing.
So that was and there was a script, of course, but we were there for like 2.5 hours, so it was a lot of improv. There were breaks in the script, so we're going around and we're being our characters, and it was just a lot of fun. And to see, if I remember correctly, I think there were 25 kids who were able to go to Washington.
Isn't that great? Jimmy Ferraro has such a great knowledge of show business, of not only the history but the mechanics of it. And I went to an audition at like a unified professional theater audition, and Jimmy called me back for Show Palace, and none of my life as it is now would have happened. So I always credit Jimmy with bringing me here, because I feel in a strange way from trying to reconcile what you imagine when you're young and your dreams of being a performer. I feel I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. And that's a great feeling.
That's amazing. I think that's so interesting. Like, you gave me my start in my career. And then, just to have that's an interesting dichotomy like that I have with you. And then I also have with Jimmy, who I just met through auditioning at his theater. And I'm just extremely blessed to know you, to know him. So before we wrap it up, if there was any bit of advice that you could give a starving artist, what would that be?
I think the best thing a person can do who really wants to make this a career is there are two things. Number one, you have to deliver. And that could mean anything. You have to make sure you know every word before everyone else.
Yep.
You need to make sure you're ready to go. You're on time. You're easy to work with. You give 110% out there on the stage. You don't have an off night. And that's not always possible not to have an off night, but you should be able to find a place where you can work that the delivery of the show and the consistency of it is what you're known for, because you'll work over and over and over again. A lot of times if you bring your personal life into things or you're having troubles, you may think you want to share it with everybody or share it with your coworkers or co-stars. They don't want to hear it. You've got to go in there and treat it like a job and do it well. And people will ask you to do it. The other thing is, the second thing, and you are a great example of this, if you feel like maybe you're not being seen for the things you want to be seen, if you feel like you're not getting the opportunities for the things you'd like to do, you create your own.
Yeah.
When Scott Daniel, who I do that show, Scott and Patty, the Scott and Patty show with, he and I, we were going through periods where we work a lot, where we wouldn't. And we came up with the idea for a mother and son cabaret act where I play the mom and he plays my son. And that thing is still going strong. And it was a creation out of necessity. But we knew we had more to say than we were being allowed to, or we were being given the opportunity to. And we wanted to create, and we wanted to make money doing it, and we wanted to entertain people. So we created our own projects.
And so many opportunities have come from that.
Absolutely. And at first, you'll think it's impossible. Who will ever want to see me? But you can't have that attitude. You get out there, you polish it, you perfect it, you make sure it's cool and interesting and original, and you put a lot of thought into it, and you treat that like a job too. I think you can achieve a level of success that you may not be wealthy, or you may not be internationally known or mega famous, but you will stay busy and you'll be able to make a life and make an income. And that's super important.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to have you on. I mean, we've been talking about it for months now.
Absolutely.
You were doing
I think I was in Gainesville. Yeah, I was in Gainesville doing a show called Scrooge in Rouge, and I played the soprano, Lottie Obligato, a very large woman. It was super funny. I have to tell you, LJ, I think your dad would be super proud of the man you are, because
Thank you.
I think not only are you a person who you have this family and you're doing everything you can to take care of your family, and you also have never not tried to pursue your dreams. And I think that, your dad would be really proud of that. And I am too.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much. This has been another episode of Starving Artist. And Matt, thank you so much for being a part of it. And thank you for being a part of my life.
Oh, absolutely. Do I look like a starving artist, though? Look at this.
You look wonderful.
I do this every day, and look how thin my fingers are.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect.
Mwah. Thank you so much, LJ.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You too. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely.